The observation room of the Zethron Research Academy was cold and filled with strange machines that beeped and hummed constantly. Dr. Kess stood at the main control panel, his three eyes fixed on the screens, showing information about the human in the habitat below. The human was called Kevin Mitchell, and he was the first of his kind to ever be studied by the Zethron people. Kevin was not like other species the Zethrons had encountered. Most creatures from across the galaxy were smaller or larger, weaker or stronger, but all of them followed patterns that made sense. Humans did not follow those patterns. They were strong enough to survive impossible conditions, yet they were not born with armor or claws. They were intelligent, but their brains were not as advanced as Zethron technology. Humans were something different, something that did not fit the normal rules. Tonight, the research team would begin their intensive study of human sleep. Dr. Kess had called the best scientists in the academy. Vrim, a behavioral specialist with sharp instincts, stood to his left. Talo, a technical expert who could read data faster than anyone, sat at a secondary console. Both of them had been waiting for this night for months. Kevin sat on his cot in the habitat below. The room was designed to match Earth conditions as closely as possible. Temperature, air composition, light levels all matched the data the Zethrons had gathered about Kevin's home planet. He wore simple clothes and seemed calm. He did not know he was being watched so carefully that Dr. Kess activated the recording systems. Every sensor in Kevin's habitat came to life, ready to capture information about what was about to happen. The doctor had theories about human sleep. Most species needed rest to restore their bodies. The Zethrons understood this. They entered dormancy twice a year, a state where consciousness simply stopped for 3 days. During that time, their bodies repaired themselves. When they woke, they were refreshed and ready for work. It was efficient. It was logical. The Zethrons assumed Kevin's sleep would be similar, but faster. Since humans were not as advanced, Kevin lay down on his cot. He took a long breath. Then he closed his eyes. The screens in the observation room erupted with data. Numbers and graphs appeared, showing measurements from every part of Kevin's body. His heart rate was recorded. His breathing patterns were measured. His brain activity was mapped through advanced scanning technology that did not hurt him. His skin temperature was monitored. His muscle activity was tracked out for the first few minutes. Kevin lay still. His breathing became deeper and slower. His heart rate decreased slightly. This part made sense. Dr. Kess nodded to himself. The human body was beginning to rest. This was expected. Then something strange happened. Vrim made a sound that indicated surprise. On his screen, the data about Kevin's eyes showed rapid movement. The human's eyes were closed, but underneath those closed eyelids, something was moving very fast. The eyes moved left and right, up and down, with no pattern the Zethrons could understand. "What is that?" Talo asked, leaning forward. His claws clicked against his console as he typed commands to get more detailed information. "Some kind of involuntary response," Vrim suggested. "Perhaps a sign of system failure?" But Kevin did not seem to be in distress. His body remained still. His breathing remained steady. His heart rate stayed low and even. Whatever was happening behind his closed eyes, his body was not alarmed. The night continued. Dr. Kess and his team watched as Kevin's body moved through different states. Sometimes his muscles would twitch without any reason. A leg would jerk. An arm would move. His face would change expression, twisting into shapes that showed emotion. But Kevin remained asleep. His consciousness did not seem to wake. Then Kevin made a sound, It was not the sound of pain. It was not the sound of distress. It was a vocalization that came from somewhere deep in his chest. The translation matrix struggled to make sense of it. The sound rose and fell with no clear meaning. Kevin's body became tense. His breathing changed. His heart rate increased. Then, gradually, he relaxed again. The vocalization stopped. Dr. Kess saved the recording automatically. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "Confirmed," Talo said. "The meaning is unclear. The translation matrix could not process it." Over the next hours, the strange patterns continued. Kevin's sleep was not simple rest. It was something complex. His body temperature changed multiple times. Early in his sleep, it dropped lower than normal. Later, it rose again. His breathing sometimes became rapid and irregular, then other times became shallow and slow. His brain activity showed in waves on the screens, rising and falling in what seemed like a rhythm. Vrim studied the data closely. "There appear to be distinct phases," he said. "The human does not simply rest. He moves between different types of rest." "Can you map the cycle?" Dr. Kess asked. Talo's claws moved rapidly across the console. Lines appeared on the main screen, showing the patterns of Kevin's brain activity, heart rate, and eye movement organized by time. The patterns were clear. Kevin's sleep was not one continuous state. It was multiple states that repeated in a cycle. As the night moved forward and Kevin had been asleep for many hours, Dr. Kess began to understand that human sleep was something he had not expected. The Zethrans entered dormancy, and their consciousness simply stopped. There was no activity during dormancy. There was no movement, no vocalization, no rapid changes. The body was simply still and silent until the 3 days of dormancy ended. But Kevin's sleep was active. His body moved. His brain was busy, even while he was unconscious. His mind seemed to be doing something important, something that required all this strange activity. Dr. Kess turned to look at his team. Vrim's face showed confusion. Talo's expression was the same. They had observed the first few hours of human sleep, and they had learned nothing that made sense. "We need more data," Dr. Kess said finally. "This will require many nights of observation. The human sleep pattern is not what we predicted." Stalo nodded and continued to record. Vrim remained silent, staring at the screens and the strange, complex patterns of Kevin's sleeping body. Neither of them could explain what they were seeing. They knew only that human sleep was far more complicated than they had ever imagined. In the habitat below, Kevin slept on, unaware of the confusion he was causing in the observation room above. His body continued its strange dance of rest and activity, of consciousness and dreams, moving through cycles that his own species had accepted for thousands of years. But to the Zethrans, watching him with their 3 eyes and their advanced machines, Kevin's sleep was a mystery that demanded to be solved. The night continued, and the data accumulated. By morning, the research team had filled their computers with information, but they had found no answers. They had only found more questions about why a human needed to rest in such a strange and complicated way. 5 nights had passed since the first observation. Kevin slept each night in the habitat below, and each night the Zethran research team recorded his body's strange behavior. The data had become enormous. Thousands of measurements filled the Academy's computers. Charts and graphs covered multiple screens. But the mystery had only grown deeper. Dr. Kess called a meeting in the main research chamber. Scientists from different departments arrived to examine the data. Dr. Leff, a behavioral specialist, sat at one end of a long table. Her skin was a pale blue color, and her 4 arms rested on the surface in front of her. Dr. Fenn, a neurological expert, arrived next. He was older than most of the other scientists, with a scarred face that showed decades of work in difficult research. He studied the main screen without speaking, his expression unreadable. Other scientists filtered in. They were all curious about the human. Kevin had become famous in the Academy. Everyone wanted to know what they had discovered about this strange creature from a dangerous world. Talo stood at the front of the room and presented the data. He used a pointer to show graphs and measurements on the large screen. He explained Kevin's heart rate changes. He showed the patterns of his brain activity. He displayed the thermal imaging that tracked Kevin's body temperature. The data was clear and organized, but it led nowhere. As you can see, Talo said, moving the pointer across a complex graph, the human enters a state that is not simple rest. The brain does not go dormant. Instead, brain activity actually increases at certain points. Dr. Fenn leaned forward. His scarred face showed concern. "This is inefficient," he said. "The human spends 8 hours in this state. The body uses energy even while the mind is supposed to be resting. On a world with limited resources, this would be wasteful. But Earth is not resource limited for humans," Dr. Leff said. Her forearms gestured as she spoke. "Humans are apex predators on their world. They have food and shelter. Perhaps their sleep pattern developed because they could afford the time." Dr. Fenn shook his head. "No. Evolution does not create complex behaviors simply because an organism can afford them. There must be a purpose. There must be a function to this elaborate rest cycle." Rim stood and pointed to another section of data. The human experiences distinct phases during sleep. The first phase shows deep brain wave activity. The body is nearly still. Heart rate is low. Breathing is slow and measured. This phase lasts approximately 90 minutes. He changed the display. Then the human enters a different phase. The brain becomes very active. The eyes move rapidly. Heart rate increases. Breathing becomes less regular. This phase lasts approximately 20 minutes. Then the pattern repeats. 4 or 5 complete cycles per night. The scientists in the room exchanged looks. They had seen nothing like this in any other species. "Perhaps the second phase is a malfunction," suggested Dr. Fenn. "Perhaps the human's brain is experiencing some kind of neural degradation. The rapid eye movement could indicate spasms. The increased heart rate could be stress." But Talo had reviewed the data carefully. "No malfunction detected," he said. "Kevin's body remains calm during these phases. His stress hormones do not increase. He shows no signs of pain or distress. Whatever is happening, his body considers it normal." Dr. Leff stood and walked to the screen. "I have a different theory," she said. "The human's consciousness is not truly dormant. Look at the brain activity during the second phase. The patterns are similar to waking consciousness, but the external sensory inputs are blocked. The human is conscious, but experiencing something internal, something imaginary." Silence fell over the room. The concept was strange. Most species experienced either wakefulness with full consciousness or dormancy with no consciousness. The idea of consciousness without external sensory input was unusual. "If that is true," Dr. Fenn said slowly, "then the human is deliberately creating some kind of internal experience. The human is not simply resting. The human is thinking. The human is experiencing something that is not real." "I believe that is correct," said Dr. Leff. "I believe the human dreams. I believe the rapid eye movement indicates the human's eyes are following something that exists only in his mind." The discussion continued for hours. Scientists debated whether such a thing was possible. How can a mind create elaborate, false experiences? What purpose would that serve? Why would evolution develop a system that demanded so much time and energy but had no obvious benefit? Rim pulled up thermal imaging on the screen. The image showed Kevin's body from the side, with different colors indicating different temperatures. The early part of Kevin's sleep showed his body cooler than normal. His core temperature dropped slightly, but as the night progressed, his temperature rose again. By morning, it approached his normal waking temperature. Temperature regulation, Dr. Fenn observed. Interesting. The body cools itself during the early deep sleep phase. Then the body warms during the active dreaming phase. This suggests two distinct physiological processes. Dr. Leff nodded. Perhaps the cooling serves one purpose and the dream state serves another. Together, they create a complete rest system. Over the following weeks, the Zethran research team continued their observation. They watched Kevin sleep night after night. They recorded thousands of hours of data. They compared Kevin's sleep patterns to the sleep patterns of other species in their database. They found nothing comparable. The Zethrans themselves entered dormancy twice a year. Complete consciousness cessation. No dreams, no activity, just rest. The process took 3 days, and then they were done. Simple, efficient, logical. Krell were reptilian traders who worked with the Zethrans. They slept for only 4 hours every 2 days. They simply went motionless, with no apparent mental activity. When the 4 hours ended, they were awake and fully functional. The Vreth were aquatic beings. They did not sleep in any traditional sense. They simply floated in a state of constant awareness, never fully asleep and never fully awake. But humans required 8 hours of this complicated, multi-phase sleep process every single day. Every day, without exception. Kevin had shown that when his sleep was interrupted, he became frustrated and irritable. When he received his full sleep, he was stable and calm. Dr. Kess reviewed all the data one night, alone in his office. The screen showed Kevin's sleep patterns repeating night after night. The same cycles, the same temperature changes, the same eye movements, the same vocalizations that the translation matrix could not fully understand on Kevin's face. During the active dreaming phases, his expression would change. Sometimes he looked peaceful. Sometimes he looked afraid. Sometimes he looked sad. His body would respond to these changes. His heart would race when his face showed fear. His breathing would become shallow when he looked troubled. Dr. Cass realized that Kevin was experiencing genuine emotions during these dream states. Emotions strong enough to affect his body despite his complete unconsciousness. The human mind was powerful enough to create false experiences that felt real enough to trigger real physical responses. This was not simple rest. This was something far more complex. Something the Zethrans did not fully understand. Something that would require much deeper study to explain. By morning, Dr. Cass had made a decision. He would expand the research program. He would bring in more specialists. He would study Kevin's sleep patterns for months, perhaps years, until they found the answer. The mystery of human sleep had become an obsession for the entire research academy. And Kevin, sleeping peacefully in the habitat below, had no idea that his simple need for rest was about to transform the Zethrans' understanding of consciousness itself. The translation matrix had been upgraded twice in the past month. The Zethran engineers had rewritten the voice recognition software to capture the sounds Kevin made during sleep. The old system had dismissed his vocalizations as noise. The new system tried to find meaning in every sound. On the 23rd night of observation, the new system achieved something remarkable. It translated Kevin's sleep vocalization into words. Not complete sentences, not clear thoughts, but actual words that had meaning. Dr. Cass was asleep in his quarters when Vrim sent an emergency alert. Dr. Cass woke immediately. He dressed quickly and made his way to the observation room. When he arrived, Vrim was standing in front of the main screen, his eyes wide with excitement. "Listen to this," Vrim said. He played a recording from 3 hours earlier in the night. Kevin's voice came through the speakers. The words were slurred and broken, but the translation matrix had captured them. "Falling, please. No, no. Dr. Cass stared at the screen. What was he saying? The system interprets it as fear responses, Rim said. Listen to more. Rim played another recording from later in the same night. Kevin's voice was different this time. Strained. Desperate. Hold on. Hold on. I have you. I have you. Do not let go. Dr. Cass felt something odd in his chest. Something that might have been emotion. Those Zethrans did not experience emotions the way humans did. He is speaking in patterns, Dr. Cass said. He's describing events. Things that are happening in his mind. Confirmed, said Talo from his console. The audio data shows Kevin as speaking approximately 12 to 15 minutes into each active dream phase. During the deep sleep phases, he remains silent. During the active phases, vocalization occurs in 73% of observed sleep cycles. Over the next week, the team gathered more data. Kevin talked in his sleep constantly. He spoke about things that did not exist. He described events that the Zethrans had never recorded in his habitat. He talked about falling from high places. He talked about running from unseen dangers. He talked about people and places that had no record in their databases. Dr. Marek arrived from the psychology department. She was younger than the other specialists, but her work with alien consciousness was considered the best in the academy. When she reviewed the translated vocalizations, she leaned back in her chair and made a low sound that indicated deep thought. This human is experiencing something that we do not, she said. His mind is creating narratives, stories. His consciousness is telling itself something, even while his awareness is suspended. But why? Asked Dr. Fenn. What purpose does this serve? Why would the human's mind create false experiences? That is the question, said Dr. Marek. In all my studies of alien psychology, I have found nothing like this. Most conscious species are aware of their surroundings. Dormant species are unaware. But this human experiences something in between, something we have no frame of reference for. Dr. Leff was reading the translations carefully. He mentions danger repeatedly, she said. In the vocalizations, he is afraid. Then he speaks about protection. He speaks about keeping something safe. Then he speaks about satisfaction or relief. The narrative appears to be complete. He is experiencing a story with beginning, middle, and end. Dr. Cass began to understand what Dr. Leff was suggesting. The human is not just making random sounds. His mind is processing something real, something important to his existence. But he is doing it while asleep, while his consciousness is suspended. Not suspended, Dr. Marek corrected gently. Redirected. The human is not unconscious during these active dream phases. The human is conscious, but conscious only to internal stimuli. The human's brain has shut off input from the external world and is processing information entirely from memory and imagination. The team continued to gather vocalizations and translate them. The patterns became clearer. Kevin's dreams often involved scenarios of danger. There were many recordings of him speaking about threats, but there were also many recordings of him speaking about other humans, about connection and protection and loss. One night, about 5 weeks into the extended observation, something different happened. Kevin became very agitated during a dream phase. His vocalizations were loud and panicked. His body was tense. His heart rate climbed. His breathing became rapid and irregular. The thermographic imaging showed his skin releasing moisture through perspiration. His face contorted with emotion, fear, desperation. His hands clenched into fists. Dr. Kess watched from the observation room with growing concern. Why does his body become so distressed if his consciousness is not aware? He asked. His consciousness is aware, Dr. Marek said quietly. His consciousness is aware of the dream. The dream feels real to him. Real enough to trigger genuine fear. Real enough to cause his body to respond as if he is in actual danger. Kevin's body remained tense for several minutes. Then, gradually, the panic seemed to fade. His vocalization changed. His voice, though still slurred and broken, took on a different quality. Calmer, more determined. "I am here. I will help. You are not alone." His heart rate decreased. His breathing became less rapid. His face relaxed. His muscles loosened. Kevin had moved through an experience from fear to some kind of resolution or comfort. When Kevin woke the next morning, Dr. Kess watched him through the habitat's external cameras. Kevin seemed aware of what had happened. The human's face showed fatigue. His movements were slower than normal. He drank water. He sat on his cot and put his head in his hands for a long time. Later that day, when the research team brought food to Kevin's habitat, Dr. Leff asked a careful question. "Kevin, we noticed that you were vocalizing during your sleep phase. You seem to be experiencing something emotionally intense. Are you well?" "Are you well?" Kevin looked up. His expression was calm, but his eyes showed awareness of what she was asking. "I was dreaming," he said simply. "The dream was intense. But that is normal. Humans dream every night. Sometimes the dreams are good. Sometimes they are frightening. But they are always part of sleep." Dr. Kess, watching from the observation room, felt confusion. Kevin spoke of dreams as though they were an accepted part of his existence. As though waking up in the middle of a night in terror was something he understood and accepted without question. "Do you not find it strange?" Dr. Leff asked. "That your mind creates these experiences? That your body responds as though you are in danger when you are safe?" Kevin thought for a moment. "No," he said finally. "This is what sleep is. On Earth, we say that sleep is when your brain processes everything that happened during the day. Dreams are how humans understand emotion, how we solve problems, how we prepare for tomorrow. My sleep is not wasting time. My sleep is necessary. Without it, I cannot think properly. I cannot feel balanced." Dr. Leff returned to the observation room and reported what Kevin had said. The team sat in silence. They had been observing Kevin as though his sleep was unusual. But to Kevin, his sleep was completely normal, completely necessary, completely understood by his own species as an essential part of being human. This realization changed the entire framework of their research. They were not observing a malfunction or a strange habit. They were observing a sophisticated system that Kevin's species had developed and accepted. A system that was so normal to humans that Kevin found the Zethrans' interest in it somewhat amusing. Dr. Marek made a note in her official report. The human subject demonstrates complete acceptance of dream-based sleep architecture. This suggests that such a system is not merely tolerated by human physiology, but actively required for optimal human function. The dreams are not errors in the sleep process. The dreams are the sleep process. In his habitat, Kevin rested. He would sleep again tonight, and his mind would create new stories, new dangers, new resolutions. And Kevin knew this was how it should be, how it had always been for his kind, how it would always be. His dreams were not a mystery to him. They were simply what it meant to be human. The experiment began on a morning when Kevin was in full health. Dr. Kess explained the plan to the research team. They would give Kevin 3 nights of normal, unrestricted sleep. Then they would keep him awake for 2 consecutive nights. Then they would allow him 4 nights of normal sleep again. During this entire period, they would measure his cognitive function, emotional stability, and physical performance. Kevin agreed to participate. The human understood that the research might help the Zethrans understand his species better. He seemed curious about what the lack of sleep might do to him. As though he was already aware that something significant would happen, the first 3 nights of sleep went normally. Kevin slept 8 hours each night. His brain went through the familiar cycles. The deep sleep phases, the active dream phases. His vocalizations came and went. His body temperature fluctuated as it always did. The data showed nothing unusual. But during the daytime hours following these nights of good sleep, Kevin's performance on cognitive tests was excellent. He solved complex problems quickly. He answered questions with clarity and precision. He seemed focused and alert. Then came the sleep deprivation nights. On the first night of the experiment, Dr. Kess kept Kevin awake through multiple methods. Lights remained bright in the habitat. Sounds played at intervals. Dr. Leff came to the habitat every hour and asked Kevin questions to keep him engaged. Kevin complied. He remained awake through the entire night. By morning, Kevin's first appearance was still relatively normal. He was tired, but he seemed to function. His eyes were slightly heavy. His movements were a bit slower, but he could still think. He could still understand questions and provide answers. The second day of sleep deprivation was worse. Kevin had now been awake for more than 30 hours. The tiredness was visible in every movement. His eyes were red-rimmed. His speech began to slow. When Dr. Leff asked him to solve a problem that had seemed easy the previous day, Kevin struggled. He could not focus his thoughts properly. He read the same instruction 3 times before understanding it. By the end of the second night without sleep, Kevin's cognitive performance had dropped significantly. He made mistakes on tests he had previously completed without error. His memory recall was poor. He forgot instructions almost immediately after hearing them. The Zethran researchers noted something else. Kevin's emotional state had changed. Where he had been calm and cooperative before, he now became irritable. When Dr. Fenn asked a question that seemed too complicated, Kevin's response was sharp and angry. Kevin apologized immediately, but the anger was there, bubbling beneath the surface. On the morning of the 3rd day without sleep, Kevin could barely stand. His body was exhausted even though he had not done physical labor. He had simply remained awake. His eyes were nearly closed. His voice was slurred. His movements were clumsy. Dr. Kess decided to end the sleep deprivation portion of the experiment. It was clear that the lack of sleep was severely harming Kevin's function. They allowed him to sleep. Kevin entered the sleep state almost immediately after lying down. His sleep that night was deeper than normal. His body seemed to grab at rest desperately. The deep sleep phase lasted longer than usual. The dream phase occurred more frequently. By morning, Kevin had made up much of the sleep deficit. When he woke, the change was visible. His eyes were still somewhat tired, but they were clear. His movements were more controlled. His speech was clearer. When the research team gave him cognitive tests, his performance had improved dramatically compared to the previous day. By the second day, after recovering sleep, Kevin was back to his baseline function. His cognitive ability returned to normal levels. His emotional stability returned. He was calm and cooperative again. Dr. Fenn reviewed the data carefully. He presented his findings to the full research team. "The pattern is undeniable," he said. Sleep deprivation caused a cascade of cognitive failures. Memory declined. Problem-solving ability declined. Emotional regulation declined. Yet the human remained physically functional. His body could move. His senses could perceive. But his mind could not process information correctly. This suggests that the elaborate sleep process serves a cognitive function, said Dr. Leff. Not simply a physical function. The sleep is not just restoring the body. The sleep is maintaining the mind. Dr. Marek leaned forward with intense interest. "I believe the dream sleep phase is the critical component," she said. "The deep sleep restores the body. But the dream sleep, the active phase, does something to the mind. Something that no other species I have studied requires. Talo presented a new analysis. He had compiled data comparing Kevin's cognitive performance on days when he had received normal sleep versus days when his sleep had been disrupted by the experiment. Look at the correlation, Talo said, pointing to graphs on the screen. When a human receives 8 hours of sleep, including multiple dream phases, his cognitive function is optimal. When a human receives less sleep, or when the dream phases are interrupted, his cognitive function declines proportionally. What about other species? Asked a junior researcher. Do we have data on the relationship between sleep and cognitive function in other species? Talo searched the database. The results were surprising. The Zethrans had similar data for many species, and the pattern was very different. The Krell actually improved in cognitive function if they slept less. They were more alert with less rest. The Vreth showed no correlation between sleep and cognitive function at all. They maintained consistent performance regardless of how much they slept. The human is unique, Talo concluded. The human's cognitive function is directly dependent on sleep quality, and not just on sleep duration. The human's cognitive function requires the specific pattern of sleep that humans experience. Deep sleep followed by dream sleep. Without this pattern, human cognitive function declines. Dr. Fenn made a remarkable observation. This suggests that human consciousness itself is dependent on sleep. The human mind is not fully human when sleep deprived. The human becomes unstable, irrational, unable to process complex information. Sleep is not an optional function for humans. Sleep is a requirement for human consciousness itself. Dr. Kess considered this carefully. You are saying that without sleep, the human mind is not fully functional? Correct, said Dr. Fenn. And more than that, I believe the dream phase is where the human processes and consolidates complex information. I believe the dreams are where the human mind solves problems and prepares for new situations. The deep sleep restores physical energy. The dream sleep restores mental capability. The research team began to look at human sleep architecture as something more than just a biological necessity. They began to see it as the foundation of human consciousness itself. Without it, humans were compromised. With it, humans could achieve remarkable cognitive function. Dr. Marek made a startling proposal. What if, she said slowly, the human's dependence on this elaborate sleep process is not a weakness? What if it is a strength? What if the human's ability to enter this complex sleep state is what gives humans their unique cognitive advantages? Explain, said Dr. Kess. Most species are limited to what they can perceive in their waking state, Dr. Marek said. But humans spend a third of their existence in an internal state. They process information internally. They create scenarios and solutions in their minds. They experience emotions intensely and consolidate those emotions into understanding. They prepare mentally for challenges they have never faced before. She continued, this elaborate sleep system may be why humans can adapt to new situations so quickly, why humans can find creative solutions to problems, why humans can form deep emotional bonds and maintain them through understanding and empathy. The sleep is not restoring the human. The sleep is making the human fully human. The observation room became quiet. The Zethran scientists had begun their research, assuming that human sleep was inefficient and strange. They had believed it was a weakness that the Zethrans and other advanced species had evolved away from. But now, after weeks of observation and experimentation, they were beginning to understand the truth. Human sleep was not a weakness. Human sleep was the source of human strength. Trin was one of the youngest researchers in the academy. He was intelligent but still learning, still developing the instincts that would make him a great scientist. But his youth gave him something the older researchers sometimes lacked. He was willing to look at old data in new ways. Trin spent 3 days reviewing the historical records from the Zethran database. The database contained information on thousands of species. It held records of conflicts between species. It held records of trade negotiations. It held data on how different species solved problems and adapted to new situations. Trin had a thought that the older researchers had not considered. He would examine how humans performed in crisis situations compared to other species. He would look at records of diplomatic encounters. He would look at military engagements. He would see if there was a pattern. What Trin found was a remarkable dot in the diplomatic records. Humans appeared less often than more advanced species. The Zethrans had superior technology. The Krell had superior military strength. The Vreth had superior intelligence. But in situations where outcomes were unclear, where solutions required creative thinking, where problems were novel and without precedent, humans found success far more often than their baseline capabilities would suggest. In military records, the pattern was even more striking. Humans who had lost battles with superior technology had somehow adapted and found victory in the next engagement. Humans who faced impossible odds had discovered unconventional approaches that worked. Humans who were outnumbered had used cooperation and improvisation to overcome numeric disadvantage. Trin compiled this data into a Palandwasibin into a Balestine presentation for the research team. He showed graphs and statistics. He presented examples of human performance under stress compared to other species. The conclusion was unmistakable. Humans with normal sleep cycles, Trin concluded, demonstrate significantly superior problem-solving abilities under stress compared to sleep-deprived humans. But more than that, humans with normal sleep cycles demonstrate superior cognitive performance in crisis situations compared to any other species in this database. The observation room became very quiet. Dr. Fenn stood slowly. You are saying that humans are more creative than species with more advanced neural structures? Not more creative, Trin said carefully, but more adaptable, more capable of finding novel solutions to unexpected problems. And that capability appears directly linked to their sleep patterns. Dr. Kess looked at the data with new eyes. He began to review everything they had learned about Kevin over the past 2 months. Kevin's problem-solving approach. Kevin's ability to understand Zethran requests and respond appropriately. Kevin's emotional flexibility. Kevin's capacity to form genuine connections with his alien researchers. All of these things had been present in Kevin. All of them had struck the Zethrans as unusual for a species that was not as technologically advanced. And now they understood why. Kevin's elaborate sleep system was not a limitation. It was a gift. Every night, Kevin's mind went into a state that the Zethrans had never experienced. Every night, Kevin processed information in ways that no Zethran could. Every night, Kevin's consciousness reorganized itself, solving problems, processing emotions, preparing for challenges. When Kevin was well rested, he was fully himself. His mind was at optimal function. His creativity was unleashed. His ability to understand and respond to complex social situations was enhanced. His emotional intelligence was sharp. Dr. Leff made a connection. This explains why human families are so tight, she said. Why human social bonds are so strong. The dream sleep allows humans to process their emotions about relationships, to work through conflicts mentally, to reinforce bonds through emotional consolidation. The sleep makes humans capable of genuine emotional connection. Dr. Marek nodded. And it explains why humans are so dangerous in conflicts, she said. Humans think through scenarios during dreams. They prepare mentally for challenges. They work through solutions mentally before they ever have to face them in reality. A human who has had adequate sleep has already mentally experienced dozens of possible futures. Talo made a final calculation. If we project the long-term advantage, he said slowly, a population of humans that maintains consistent, healthy sleep patterns will demonstrate superior problem-solving capability compared to other species who maintain equivalent levels of technology but who do not experience this sleep architecture. The implications were staggering. Humans were not advanced because of technology. Humans were advanced because of how their minds worked. And how their minds worked was directly dependent on sleep, on dreams, on the elaborate nightly process that the Zethrans had initially dismissed as strange and inefficient. That afternoon, Dr. Kess called for Kevin. The human arrived in the observation room, looking curious. The research team stood to acknowledge his presence. Kevin seemed slightly confused by this gesture of respect. Among his own species, this level of acknowledgement would typically be reserved for leaders or elders. Kevin, Dr. Kess said carefully, we have been studying your sleep for a very long time. We have finally begun to understand what it means, what your sleep pattern actually does for you. Kevin listened calmly. He seemed unsurprised. He seemed to have expected that this understanding would eventually come. Your sleep is not a weakness, Dr. Kess continued. Your sleep is how you maintain your ability to think. Your dreams are how you solve problems. Your elaborate sleep process is the reason humans have the capability to adapt and survive. We were wrong to see it as unusual. Your sleep architecture is not a burden. It is the source of your species' strength. Kevin smiled. The expression was warm and genuine. Yes, he said simply. This is what we have always known. On Earth, we say that a good night's sleep can solve problems that keep you awake. We say that the answer comes to you in your sleep. We say that rest is when you become yourself. For humans, sleep is not something we do. Sleep is something we are. Dr. Fenn stepped forward. His scarred face showed the weight of understanding. We would like to ask something of you, Kevin. We would like to study the structure of your sleep more deeply. We would like to understand how your mind enters the dream state, how your body regulates the sleep cycles, how the dreams accomplish what they accomplish. We would like to understand this so that perhaps other species might benefit from what humans have learned. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Yes, I will help you. Perhaps it will help others understand that not all strength comes from weapons or technology. Some strength comes from how the mind works. Some strength comes from understanding yourself, which happens in sleep. Some strength comes from dreams. The research program was redesigned. What had begun as a study of human sleep out of curiosity became a systematic examination of consciousness itself. The team looked at how human sleep was structured. They examined the neurology of the dream state. They recorded more vocalizations and studied what Kevin's dreams contained. They looked for patterns in how dreams consolidated memory and processed emotion. Over the following months, the Academy began to recognize that human sleep architecture was not a medical curiosity. It was an evolutionary solution to consciousness. The elaborate sleep system had allowed humans to develop sophisticated minds capable of complex emotion, creative thought, and adaptive behavior. The dreams were not errors in the sleep process. The dreams were the most important part of what made humans human. Dr. Marek presented the official conclusion to the Zethran Council. The species called human has developed a unique approach to consciousness. Instead of possessing raw processing capability like some species, humans possess a sleep system that generates deep understanding through emotion consolidation and problem-solving in the subconscious state. This approach has allowed humans to develop superior adaptive capability and emotional intelligence. We recommend that human sleep architecture be studied as a model for consciousness development across all species. The Council approved additional funding for the research program. Messages were sent to other Zethran research facilities requesting samples of human sleep data. Proposals were submitted to study whether other species might benefit from human-style sleep training. In his habitat, Kevin returned to his normal routine. Each night, he lay down and entered the sleep state. His body went through the familiar cycles. His dreams came and went. His mind processed the day and prepared for tomorrow. And above him, in the observation room, the Zethran research team watched with new understanding. They no longer saw Kevin's sleep as strange. They saw it as remarkable. They saw it as the elegant solution that had allowed humans to achieve greatness, not through raw power, but through the power of a mind that understood itself. Kevin had been sleeping on the cold research station for weeks. But now his sleep was not a prisoner's captivity. His sleep was the thing that made him valuable. His sleep was the thing that made him strong. His sleep was the thing that made him more than just a body. It made him human.